There is a very special forest in Minnesota where the birds and the animals and people share the country in harmony, and all of them benefit. It is 6,100 acres of public land, beautiful scenery, clean lakes and streams, berries and wildflowers, bogs and small ponds, and all the creatures of the North Country. That special place is Deep Portage Conservation Reserve in Cass County, Minnesota, named for lakes and an old Indian route. In the headwaters loop of the Mississippi, in the land of the loon and the lady slipper. It is 5 miles long, 2 wide, and contains 5 lakes and 12 miles of shoreline on its boundary waters. Though the forest feels remote and wild, it's easy to get there from airports and highways that lead to the winding entrance road. Reserve has a special meaning here. The lands always open to the public are reserved for special uses in a working forest, managed so the usefulness is increased and preserved. The rolling hills were logged 2 generations ago when Minnesota timber built homes and warehouses hundreds of miles down the Mississippi, when giant trees made wide boards and sturdy timbers. The land was left to natural ecological cycling without attention, as western and southern lands produced more desired trees faster. Land went off tax rolls and became public responsibility. The small Isaac Walton League chapter here saw opportunities in the land, enlisted help of professionals in the state Gopher chapter. They offered a plan for using the forest for conservation education. With a federal grant, Minnesota Environmental Sciences Foundation inventoried the timber, waters, and wildlife. It developed a plan with ideas from 2,500 citizens, and the county adopted that plan in 1973. It guides each step in Deep Portage progress. Now the forest is being restored. The new harvest is poles and posts, firewood, trees for paper and building materials. It provides better homes for wildlife and places for people to enjoy the outdoors as they learn how to care for natural resources. Some of the 6,100 acres, about 700, are locked up in a natural area. Only natural forces work there. Trees die naturally and rot. Food and shelter for wildlife change as new kinds of plants take over. Wildfire is stopped to protect the nearby study center and the working forest. This is the reference area for research and demonstration of unmanaged ecosystems. You may go see, but never touch. But in some places, aspen is cut to the ground to speed regeneration. Grouse and rabbits and deer like that. In other places, the overhead is opened and pines are carefully thinned and trimmed to increase the quantity and quality of timber that may be harvested in another 50 years as the forest recycles with our help. Deep Portage operations are directed by a citizen governing board. It was created by county commissioners after they set the land aside in 1973 as a memorial forest for special protection. That board directs activities in 5 programs that make Deep Portage a unique institution: natural resources management, conservation education, recreation, research, and community service. These programs attract support from a host of groups and people: federal, state, and local governments, schools and colleges, private citizens and businesses, school teachers, research scientists, foresters and conservation officers, doctors, lawyers, loggers, professionals, and specially skilled volunteers. It is a unique example of volunteer participation for common purposes. Operations are conducted by a small professional staff under a nationally recognized director. They work with more than 200 specially skilled leaders who taught more than 10,000 persons in regular reserve programs in 1 year. In classrooms and in the field, participants have come from 27 states for programs here and at resorts and at schools and colleges. A Japanese educator studied and published 3 articles to stimulate a similar project in an imperial forest. Educators come to observe operations and teaching techniques. Hundreds of casual visitors register annually, 3/4 of them from outside the region, from 27 states and 7 countries. More than 4,000 students came from 11 schools for day classes here with their teachers, many trained and deep portage workshops. People come to see the natural resources management activities, first program we mentioned. They see model timber development and harvest, an experiment in growing a new kind of jack pine, careful attention to protecting soil and water. They come for the second program, too, conservation education. For more than the usual required school courses, realtors come to discuss how to develop lakeshore carefully. Students learn how to teach others to teach conservation education. Instructors for training and advanced education for sportsmen and youth. Candidates to work on advanced degrees and for skills to become foresters, microbiologists, recreation leaders. More than 40 interns from 10 colleges have studied here in cooperative programs with nature centers and colleges and other higher education institutions. Youth from 64 Minnesota communities worked and studied here in Youth Conservation Corps activities. All education activities are directed from one structure, the Interpretive Center, built in 1979, of native materials and almost hidden in the forest near Bass Pond. Here, visitors see displays of natural materials. They enjoy films and talks and discussions. They learn to understand natural forces and how to work with them to ensure resources for future generations. People have fun at Deep Portage. Learning is an adventure, fun with a purpose that uses the forest as a playground as well as a classroom. The recreation program, third major activity, teaches every kind of outdoor recreation skill for appreciating lake and forest country. Many come just to enjoy being outdoors and accidentally learn more about nature. There are classes on how to use the forests and lakes carefully for hunting, fishing, and trapping, collecting rocks and berries and nuts and leaves, for bird watching and nature study, painting, sculpture, and photography, hiking, camping, skiing. People come every day of the year. There's a different program each day, morning and afternoon. The reserve is never closed except on some holidays. Admission is free, and only modest fees are charged for some courses, and for services such as testing lake water and private well samples. You can explore 26 miles on trails carpeted with grasses and clover. They loop for short excursions and lead to remote areas, where you can enjoy solitude as though everyone else has gone home or is lost. Some probably are, or hidden from you in this large forest. A boardwalk takes you 800 feet across a deep bog, 40 feet of cold water and plants and muck, created since the last glacier left an ice block here 12,000 years ago. You see plants that eat flies, small water creatures, new mosses and trees living on the debris. On a self-guiding route, you test your skill in identifying things and can measure your stride and become a member of the chain gang, named for a measure used by surveyors. The Bass Pond Sampler takes you through varied terrain, around 11 acres where students collect water samples and things in the water. And scientists study prey and predator fish, algae and aquatic plants. A blacktop trail leads through a sampling of most things you can find on the reserve. It starts at the Living Library, a collection of 3,000 plants, more than 150 species, some in bloom every month from April to frost. The trail winds along Bass Pond and on to a big deep lake, more than 100 feet deep. It's specially welcomed by handicapped and those who want just a smooth, easy walk. A service club is giving equipment so sight handicapped can feel and taste and smell things along the way. The canoe trail up Boy River and through 3 lakes starts at Bass Pond. It ends at an out camp for training in primitive experiences. You paddle through the home of ducks and beaver, loons and the great blue heron. A bald eagle sometimes circles overhead, fishing for its young in a nest 5 miles away, but we won't show you where. The 4th major program is a group of research projects. The reserve set aside one section of land for the National Authority in the ruffed grouse. Timber is cut and brush and grasses managed to provide varied habitat. On 2 tracks, interns count furry and feathery things every week. Visitors are invited to add their observations to the census in the different settings. The project is to find best ways to produce more wildlife and measures effects of varied habitat management methods. Research goes deeply into fresh waters of Minnesota. Freshwater Biological Research Foundation is studying the chemistry and biology of lakes and precipitation, a so-called acid rain phenomenon. That research depends on volunteers. They measure lake waters daily and rains, then rush samples to chemists in Deep Portage laboratories provided by the supporting foundation, laboratories for photography, freshwater, and biology. These research volunteers come from another project, Deep Portage Weather Network. The Deep Portage Foundation coordinates more than 200 volunteers, sponsored by 4 cooperating organizations. They observe daily and report to the state climatologist. They cover parts of 6 counties in Mississippi headwaters, gathering data in a mesoclimate study and for state phenology records. The National Weather Service considers Deep Portage location so important, it is an official government observatory, with more equipment yet to come. The foundation sponsored a handbook for volunteer observers that is widely used in schools and is official guidance for several government agencies. The meteorologist and author contributed their services. Community service includes help to resorts, lakeshore associations, chambers of commerce, local governments. The reserve helps people understand careful use of shorelines, preventing pollution, improving private timberlands. Encourages visitors to study and play here, enjoy more vacations here, and spread the word on good conservation practices. A lakeshore association gave equipment for tests the laboratories make of a stream through several lakes to detect possible pollution. A microbiologist gave special instruments used in research and community service work. Hundreds of volunteers help it happen. They join Friends of Deep Portage, the membership society of Deep Portage Conservation Foundation. Friends sell interpretive materials at the service center. Meet me in the forest t-shirts, prints donated by artists and naturalists. Friends stage fundraising events. Metropolitan Friends hold an annual spring rally in the Twin Cities to report the Deep Portage story to other supporters. Volunteers help staff the center. These eager workers are called brown badgers from the color of their name tags. The strength of Deep Portage comes from this wide participation of hundreds who give their services.